I came home much earlier than expected and walked straight into a nightmare I never imagined I'd face. My girlfriend was in the kitchen, proudly talking about sleeping with another man. I didn't say anything. I simply collected my things and walked out. Since then, she's called, texted, emailed, and tried every possible way to contact me, but I've blocked her everywhere. I'm 38, she's 36, and we'd been together for 5 years. I just discovered that the woman I believed I would marry had been unfaithful, and the way I discovered it was absolutely brutal. For some background, I've never been married and never had children. Not because I didn't want either, but because life simply never worked out that way. I honestly believed Rachel was the one. Last weekend began like any normal guy's trip. My friend Dan has a lake cabin where we meet up every few months. It's nothing fancy, just fishing, playing cards, drinking a few beers, and escaping everyday life for a couple of days. Usually, I stay until Monday morning and go directly to work. But this time, I realized I'd accidentally left my laptop at home. By Sunday afternoon, I decided to head back early, grab dinner along the way, and surprise Rachel. I stopped at our favorite little Italian restaurant and picked up takeout, thinking she'd be happy to see it. When I arrived home around 6 o'clock, everything seemed completely normal. I could hear her laughing from the kitchen. I wanted to sneak up behind her with the food and make her smile. But before I entered the room, I heard her voice. She was talking on the phone. Then I heard words that felt like they cut straight through me. Within seconds, everything I thought I knew came crashing down. She was laughing and saying, "Last night was amazing. He's such a generous lover. I've never experienced anything like it. Met him on Tinder. He even took me to dinner first. Such a classy move. We barely made it to the couch. He's huge, way bigger than Mike. Believe me, I'm going back for more." I dropped the food. The containers burst open across the floor. She turned around and all the color disappeared from her face when she saw me standing there. Tears filled my eyes before I could even understand what I'd heard. She reached toward me for a hug, but I pushed past her, went straight to the office, grabbed my laptop, and walked out without saying one word. For 4 days, I disappeared completely. I checked into a cheap motel in a nearby town, shut everything off, and ignored the endless stream of texts, calls, emails, and messages. She even contacted mutual friends and my mom to make sure I was okay. I told them I was safe and simply needed some time alone. That one overheard phone call destroyed everything. I genuinely believed Rachel was my future. I'd even purchased a ring and planned to propose on July 4th, during our 6th anniversary. Dan and his wife, the people who originally introduced us, knew about the plan. Now that ring sits inside my duffel bag, feeling like some cruel joke. I've never experienced infidelity before, and I feel completely gutted. I don't even know whether I could sit through Rachel's version of events. Just thinking about her makes me feel sick. The first weekend, my 3 closest friends came to visit me at the motel. I told them exactly what had happened, and they were completely stunned. I asked them to turn off location sharing on their phones, just in case Rachel tried tracking me through their wives. She's particularly close with one of them. That night, we sat at the motel bar while I drank far more than I should have. Definitely not my proudest moment. Their phones kept buzzing with messages from home, but they stayed beside me. One of their wives even wanted me to talk to Rachel because she said Rachel was desperate for me to come home. I told my friend to worry about his own marriage and left it there. Later that night, I caught myself flirting with the bartender and even talking to a couple of women who were visiting town for business. Again, not something I'm proud of, but I was hurt, furious, and emotionally numb. By the middle of the week, Dan drove past the house Rachel and I had shared. He told me she'd missed work Monday and Tuesday, but by Wednesday she'd returned to her normal routine. That's when I decided to make my move. While she was gone, I went into the house and packed everything that belonged to me. The place was a disaster. Dirty dishes were piled everywhere, laundry covered the rooms, and trash was overflowing. It took me almost 4 hours to get all my belongings out. For some reason, I cleaned the place before leaving. Maybe I wanted to leave things neat. Maybe I simply needed some kind of closure. That evening, I knew she must have walked through the door and discovered the empty closets, because my phone immediately filled with calls. I didn't answer. Instead, I went to my mom's house. For now, that's where I'll stay until I can find an apartment. Honestly, I have no idea what happens next. All I know is that the woman I thought I was building a future with managed to turn that entire future into dust during one careless conversation. The landlord told me directly that I can't remove myself from the lease without Rachel's signature, which means I'm stuck paying half the rent until October. So here I am, 38 years old, sleeping in my old bedroom at my parents' house. Honestly, it feels pathetic. That Thursday, after avoiding Rachel for several days, I finally agreed to meet her. I told her we could talk at a downtown bar on Friday night, but I would be bringing a friend so things couldn't get out of control. She kept pushing me to come home and talk privately, but I wasn't about to let her control the situation again. Eventually, she agreed. My friend and I arrived early. I ordered some food and had a couple of drinks, trying to settle the storm inside my chest. When Rachel walked in, she started making small talk as if nothing had happened. I stopped her and told her I had a list of questions. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. The first thing I asked was how long she'd been unfaithful. She insisted over and over that it had been only one mistake. I told her I didn't believe her. I said our relationship was over, and the least she could do now was tell me the truth so I could finally stop living in uncertainty. Eventually, she broke down. She admitted that every time I went on one of those guys' trips over the previous 2 years, she'd convinced herself I must have been sleeping with other women. So, according to her, she decided to get even by doing the same thing. I could feel my blood boiling. I told her that was one of the weakest excuses imaginable for destroying a relationship. Then I asked who she'd been talking to on the phone that day. The moment I mentioned the call I'd overheard, she suddenly became quiet. I asked whether she'd at least used protection. She said sometimes. Then she smirked and told me, "You're lucky I just tested clean, so don't freak out if your last time was unprotected." That was the moment everything inside me snapped. I pulled out the ring I'd been planning to give her. I told her I'd been preparing to propose at Dan's cookout, the exact place where we'd first met. I put everything on the table and then told her she had destroyed it all. She broke down crying and begged me to reconsider, but I told her the woman I loved had never really existed. I had loved the version of her I believed she was. That relationship was over. She continued messaging me afterward, but I knew I'd block her soon enough. So that night, I found myself sitting at Buffalo Wild Wings, sipping a beer, watching the fights, and cheering for Poirier. My entire world had collapsed, but at least I wasn't lying to myself anymore. The people who commented on my original story were right. Cheaters almost always say it happened only once, and when that explanation stops working, they turn around and accuse you instead. Rachel claimed she believed I was cheating. Same old story. Meanwhile, I'm still stuck on the lease for several more months, but at least I have a roof over my head and some time to figure out my next move. She came incredibly close to becoming my wife, and she threw everything away for a few cheap thrills. I've been trying to focus on recovering. I've even stepped away from alcohol for a while because I don't want to spiral any further. Someone pointed out that the mystery man Rachel bragged about could potentially be someone I know, maybe even the spouse of one of my friends. If I ever discover who he is, I'll make sure the guys know. As for that confusing phone call I overheard, the one where Rachel was bragging, I eventually learned more about it. The wife who kept calling me through my friend's phone was actually the woman hosting the 4th of July party. Rachel had apparently fed her the same story. It was only one line. She was trying to smooth everything over. I met her for coffee and told her exactly what had happened. Right there in the cafe, she called Rachel on speakerphone and demanded the truth. Rachel admitted everything. The woman hosting the party completely lost it. She told Rachel not to bother coming to her party if I was going to be there. She called Rachel's behavior disgusting. She even apologized to me for believing Rachel at first. I told her there was nothing to apologize for. We'd both simply trusted the wrong person. As for who Rachel was actually speaking with that day, my gut tells me it was her sister. I tried reaching out. I sent a couple of texts and even called once, but I got no response. A few of Rachel's friends insisted they knew nothing about what had happened. Apparently, Rachel used to host Saturday wine nights while I was away with the guys. One acquaintance who attended said she never heard anyone mention cheating. Her mom actually called me yesterday. She said Rachel was in a terrible place and asked whether I'd consider giving her another chance. I told her there was absolutely no possibility of that happening. This Monday, I finally forced myself back to work after taking a week away. I'm trying to rebuild some structure, get back into the gym, and maybe even consider therapy. I'm nowhere near okay, but at least I'm moving forward. Rachel is blocked everywhere now. That chapter of my life is finished. If I ever discover who she was whispering to on that phone call, I'll share it. For now, I'm focused on cutting ties, healing, and refusing to let her destroy me any more than she already has.